There are two paths we might take that lead us to a comfort zone. The first is that we work really hard, we do all the things, we achieve the success, and then once we reach that level of success, we become comfortable in it and we stop doing the things that led us to that point in the first place. The second is that we find ourselves in this space where things aren't going as well as they could, but it also isn't that bad. And because it isn't that bad, we aren't jolted into action. And therefore, we just kind of stay in this sort of mediocre, average space. In both of these instances, we have a certain level of self-satisfaction with the current situation that inhibits us from taking new action. And so that's how we end up being complacent and stuck in a comfort zone. And so irrespective of how you got there, here are 4 ways to get you unstuck from complacency and out of your comfort zone. There are 2 modes that we tend to operate in: exploit and explore. Exploit sounds bad, but it really just means that we are focusing on what has always worked. We are trying to extract as much value from the current resources that we have, from the current effort that we are putting into something. Whereas exploration is all about trying new things. Now, ideally what you want is that this should be balanced, that there should be a specific ratio of exploitation and exploration. But of course, when you get stuck in your comfort zone, what that really means is that most of your effort, almost 100% of your resources, will go into exploiting what is currently working. And so the easiest way to start moving out of your comfort zone is just a slight recalibration, is to allocate a little bit more of your time, energy, and resources to exploration. Google has a great way of doing this. They have the 20% rule. This means that for people inside of Google, they should spend about 20% of their time on ideas and tasks that are outside of their usual job responsibilities or their usual job description. It's of course really great when we've just secured a big deal or we've just had a big win, but what we do after really matters. And unfortunately, what very often happens is that we'll take our foot off the gas and we'll just kind of coast our way into complacency. That response is obviously not ideal, and so here are 2 better responses. The first is to use that victory to recalibrate to a new target. Emma Hayes, one of the most accomplished professional soccer coaches, said that every win is a new beginning, and we'll tap into more of her wisdom in just a bit. The second response draws inspiration from Ryan Holiday. He's a very well-known and famous author, and he says that before he finishes one book, he's already starting his next one. And the reason behind it is that he's just engrossed in the process all the time. So the process keeps him moving forward. The process stops him from becoming complacent. And of course, I'm not suggesting that you should gloss over your victories. I think Ryan Holiday has had enough victories, and so for him, it's just not that important. Whereas for many of us, that victory is really important. It marks a milestone. It provides a bit of inspiration for us to keep going. And so, yes, enjoy the victory, but at the same time, also enjoy the process. Fall in love with what you're doing so you can just keep going and keep pushing the boundaries. Okay, so back to Emma Hayes. She has this great quote. She says, "I'm known for being a coach who goes harder after winning. If it isn't broken, break it, because comfort is the death of teams." This quote is actually a great little thought experiment that you can engage in. And the question to ask yourself is, what if it stopped working? Remember that when we are in exploit mode, in our comfort zones, all we are doing is we are focusing on what is currently working. We aren't trying new things. And the problem with that is that when it does stop working, because eventually everything does, then what? We've seen many examples of this over the years where people build businesses on social media, on rented land, and then when the algorithm changes or when an account gets banned, all of a sudden the entire business goes away. Whereas if they asked themselves this question, what if it stopped working, then they might have diversified, they would have tried new things, and as a result, they would have had multiple income streams into their business instead of just relying on rented land. One thing I can promise you is that everything that works now eventually breaks. And so it might be a good idea for you to think about, how do you break it first? All right, last one. A few years ago, I was working with a coaching client who was a very successful CEO, had a company of about 500 employees, and we were in this coaching session, and it was kind of strange because everything was going really well for him. Like, you couldn't really be sorry for him. But in the same breath, it just felt like something was off, like he was missing something, and we couldn't quite put our finger on it. Eventually, what we realized is that even though everything was going well externally, internally, he was in survival mode. And so as we spoke about this, the language that we started putting towards how he was showing up was, we said he was harmless. Like he didn't have any edge. There was no fire. There was no momentum. There was no drive. There was no growth. And so we spoke about this harmlessness in how he was showing up. And eventually, through many conversations, we got to the point where we asked, well, if you aren't going to be harmless, then what will you be? And he said, I want to be dangerous again. And I think that's an important moment that anyone who is stuck in a comfort zone needs to have. It's a moment where desire is born again. And it comes from taking a really hard look at yourself, taking a really hard look at what you have become inside of your comfort zone. Jerry Colonna, who is a great executive coach, has this question. He says, how are you complicit in creating that which you say you don't want? Every time I sit with that question, it hits me really hard because it highlights the complicitness of the life that we have created. In some ways, we all want to stay in our comfort zones because it's comfortable. But if you stay in it for too long, you realize that it's not a place of growth. It's not even a place of stagnation. In fact, it's just a place where dreams and potential go to die. So if you are ready to reinvent yourself out of your comfort zone and into something more, then watch this video next.